You're listening to the Archaic Drum Podcast, in-depth conversations with great visionaries and free thinkers of today. Beat by beat, evolving self and society through ancient wisdom and emerging paradigms. With your host, James Benton.
Welcome, everyone. This is our 5th episode, recorded on October 28th, 2013. Today, we'll be speaking with Simon G. Powell. Simon is a writer, musician, and filmmaker with an avid interest in the biosphere and psychoactive mushrooms. He is the author of Darwin's Unfinished Business and the Psilocybin Solution, the role of sacred mushrooms in the quest for meaning. And it is this book that we will be speaking with him about today to learn more on how the astounding nature of these organisms can provide a direct link to the wisdom of nature and the meaning of life. Welcome, Simon. How are you today?
How are you? All right?
I'm doing well. I'm just happy we have a connection here after the big storm that blew through up there in the UK today. It's a bit calmer now, I presume.
Yeah, the storm has now passed.
Good to hear that. Well, could we start by you telling us a bit just how you arrived at the decision of deciding to write a book about psilocybin mushrooms? Was there some sort of epiphany that arrived, or how did that come about exactly, Simon?
Well, I can't trace it to a single experience that I had sort of one evening or one afternoon, but it really goes back to what I call my mushroom fever period of 1992, where I spent 3 months. And you've got to remember, 1992 was an interesting time because Terence McKenna was just becoming very well known, at least in the UK, and his the Archaic Revival and Food of the Gods had just come out, and the Archaic Revival had a big impact on me. And there was a UK band called The Shaman that were working with Terence McKenna, and they were big at the time. And I just graduated from psychology from UCL in 1992, so I was kind of all geared up. I was a young man, just graduated, and I spent 3 months, my mushroom fever period, in the grip of this mushroom fever, and some of my experiences were so profound. I can't say any one in particular, but I had numerous, I guess you'd call them mystical experiences, and that from then on, I knew I had to pursue this mushroom, and 21 years on, I'm still, I've got another book coming out next year about my personal psilocybin experiences, my personal journey, as it were. So, that shows you how moved I was at the time. But it wasn't any one particular experience. It was really a 3-month period of time, really.
After that 3-month period, did you stop doing the mushrooms completely, or did you just take a break for a while? How did that go?
Well, the mushroom fever period, that 3-month period, I was doing them, I don't know, average maybe twice a week. I mean, I did them a lot over the three-month period. Some would say I took too much, but at the time it seemed the right thing to do. I was a very inspired man, perhaps too inspired, just full of joy and inspiration, and it was like I'd discovered something very, very profound, because I was getting the mushroom from Richmond Park in London, which is, they're actually growing in London, so I was kind of in tune with the small amount of wilderness that remained in London where this mushroom was growing. But yeah, I mean, after that period, I then, just a long time ago, 21 years ago, I then decided I wanted to write a book about the mushroom, and I even corresponded with McKenna a little bit via email. But yeah, I started doing research then in the British Library, and I spent years doing research, and I think my mushroom consumption went down, maybe 2 or 3 times a year.
Well, I think what many people aren't aware of is that the usage of these particular mushrooms or fungi, I guess you could say, has not been restricted to a group of thrill-seeking hippies or deadheads. That for millennia it was used as a sacred sacrament in more than one culture, especially the Mazatec tribe in Mexico. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, they were considered. I mean, the Aztecs called them Tiananacatl, which means God's flesh. But they've always been revered in those cultures in and around Mexico. They were highly revered. And when Gordon Wasson managed to access the mushroom in Oaxaca, I mean, the mushroom was considered holy and sacred and was very much revered. And Wasson himself, in his famous Life article piece in 1957, was keen to convey the awe that native peoples had for the mushroom. So there is it's a shame, but the thing you've got to remember with psychedelics in general is they don't mean to sound nasty or anything, but they do attract kind of a subculture element. So whereas academics and artists and sort of normal people in inverted commas tend to shy away from psychedelics because of various associations. There is a kind of a hippie subculture, let's get off our heads kind of thing that does Maya things, I think, and there is people do need. More people are aware of it now through books and through the work of researchers and the work of academic research. That the second wave of psychedelic research is going on. There is a serious side, and it's all about set and setting, and psilocybin is not a party drug. That's clear.
No,
you can feel tremendously happy and inspired through a psychedelic like psilocybin, but it does have this deeper side to it where you can. I'm talking from my own experience now, where you access a state of mind that seems to be connected to something sacred, and by that it's a higher state of consciousness where you feel connected to everything, and that's a serious thing, and it needs to be. That's what I try and do in my books and my work, is to try and convey that sacred awe that is potentially there. And it's not, like I say, it's not just a party. I'm not the only one to say this. It's lots of people say it. It's not a party drug,
No, they're not. There seems to be a real stigma around these things in relation to the word drug itself, I think, and that in itself has kept it from it entering more into mainstream society and being acceptable as being something possibly useful for society. Don't you think?
Well, this all boils down to language. I was asked to write an essay for this website about it's a sort of cognitive liberty style website. I wrote an essay. They haven't published it yet, but it's about the so-called war on drugs, which is really a war on people who use drugs. But it's
been called a war on consciousness.
Language, the drug has become more so in the UK than America, I think, because you have drug stores in America. But in the UK and Europe, the word drug is pejorative. So it can be dismissed. If you're talking about psilocybin mushrooms, people can dismiss it as drugs, and it's become a pejorative term. And then they also talk about drug misuse and drug abuse for people who know exactly what they're doing, and they're not abusing or misusing substances. They're using them. So there's all this negative language surrounding. There's a lot of baggage there, but things are changing slowly.
Yeah. Well, as helpful as this particular psychoactive compound can be, I do acknowledge that they have the ability to induce some fearful states in one, although I do believe that those particular states have their purpose in some way.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I always quote Terence McKenna, who said we're talking about bad trips. I mean, people, even at Johns Hopkins recently, where they did the study where healthy volunteers, the bulk of them had very profound spiritual experiences that they rated as highly meaningful. They still went through difficult parts of the experience can be difficult as well, and so this is why they're used in substances like psilocybin can be used in therapy, because they bring up unfinished business from the depths of the psyche, from the unconscious. So, and people are aware of this bad trip thing, and it always puts fear in people. But as the quote from McKenna is that a bad trip is really when you're being forced to learn more quickly than you're accustomed to learning.
Yeah.
So it's all at the end of the day, it's mostly all good. You know, you learn about yourself, and you have to face yourself. This is the thing. You face your. I said in my Manna film, it brings you. It's like to consume the mushroom is to consume the truth, and you face yourself. And people don't, for obvious reasons, don't want to face themselves and see all the. Maybe they've got bad family relationships, and chips on their shoulder, and all this kind of stuff we carry around with just beneath conscious awareness. All that comes up, and you really have to brace yourself. You have to brace yourself to face yourself, you know. And so there's a lot of there is fear there, and it's understandable. But there's nothing to fear but fear itself. So it's good to face those things. And I think you come out. You know, you got people flocking to Peru to partake in ayahuasca ceremonies. You know, because they want to. They feel they're not grounded, and they want to learn and be grounded again. And often you have to work through certain issues, but you come out fresh at the other end. It's like shedding old skin and being reborn. And so this fear that society and the media put round about bad trips, it will drive you mad and all this kind of thing. Yeah, that's unfortunate, but it is important to acknowledge the darker side of the experience, but it's all good in the end, I think, assuming you're healthy.
Yes, I think so. It's facing these things that we normally suppress, and these substances bring those out as a gift in some way for us to face and work through in some way, huh?
Yeah. Well, they're used this is why they're using the recently, this second wave of psychedelic, well, I say second wave, it's been going on for ages now. In the UK, they're doing research with David Nutt and his colleagues are doing research with psilocybin, and they recently got, I think it's £500,000 from the Medical Research Council to look into using, I think they've started a study as well, looking into using psilocybin to treat depression. So there is a therapeutic side to the mushroom, and that involves material from the unconscious being brought into conscious awareness, which is all what psychological therapy is all about.
Yes, I find this interesting that there's several different groups that are doing studies on these compounds, yet at the same time they remain classified illegal substances. I suppose I can only surmise that this is one of two things, that they know that it reveals something, has the potential to reveal something to an individual that causes them to question the perceived norms of culture and society. What do you think?
It can dissolve. It gets people thinking. But you've got to remember that the way the law works currently, psilocybin, the active ingredient in these mushrooms that we're talking about, is classified as Class A or Schedule 1. And that means that there are definitions. You have to have definitions and parameters when they make laws and draw up legislature. And that means there's no medical utility to these substances, and they're considered to be the most harmful to a user. Now, these studies, these peer-reviewed papers that are being published now that show that there is a therapeutic potential, that will and I've talked to some of the people that work with Hefter and Matt, I know Rick Doblin as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that when they've published enough papers, it simply will not be possible. They'll have to schedule these substances because it doesn't stand up to the current scheduling, doesn't stand up to scientific scrutiny, and so they'll be forced to reschedule them, and that then makes it easier to do research because they have to currently jump through so many hurdles to do research. They've got to go through in America, the DEA and the FDA and any number of draconian acronyms that are there to kind of stop. There are all these fences to go over, but the research, it's going forward. It's very positive, and I think there's change, but it's excruciatingly slow. But I've seen it in my lifetime over the last 20 years, and I think we're in a better position now. And so once it's, for instance, and I've talked to a few researchers about this, they've given psilocybin to people suffering from end-stage cancer, and most of the subjects find it useful to help them deal with that situation. And the thing is as people have noted, we're all, those patients were dying. They had like 12 months left to live, but we're all dying. So if it's useful for that subset of the population, then there's evidence that it's useful for all of us because we're all going to live and die. So I think things are changing slowly, but there's a lot of rigidity there, and it will take time. But I think once it's being used, it's similar with cannabis. Once it's being used in a therapeutic manner, then it becomes harder to try and it doesn't make sense to criminalize healthy people from using. So I think the next step will be there'll be some decriminalization will occur. And, eventually, the aim, I suppose, and that's the aim I often think about, is how these substances need to be integrated into culture. That would be a healthy thing to have them healthily integrated. And I think I'm positive. I think other people say, "Oh no, it will never happen," but I'm not so sure. I think it will. There's enough committed people out there. And I think there is a wave of change, I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I am too with it. We have a movement now with marijuana being decriminalized.
The devil's weed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's actually decriminalized in certain, like Colorado, isn't it?
Yes, it has.
Or legalized. It's actually legalized, I think, isn't it, as opposed to just decriminalized?
I believe it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Who would have thunk that?
Yeah. This psilocybin study you were talking about, those participants actually experienced a rather dramatic reduction in the levels of anxiety they were experiencing. Wasn't it around
the cancer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was rather astonishing at how much they were able to reduce their fear and anxiety they were experiencing in relation to their illness. Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned it in my psilocybin solution book. I saw a video with one of the participants, this woman, I think she was called Pam Sakuda, and there's a video on YouTube, on the internet, where she talks about and she's a regular, middle-aged woman, and she's talking about how useful and beneficial the psilocybin experience was for her, and she comes across, it's very moving. And then I was very sad to find, she died. I don't know, the cancer got her, 6 months later or whatever. But it's very moving. Her testimony is very moving. So it needs to be. It's got multiple. Psilocybin, I think, is one of the most interesting, if not the most interesting, substances produced by the biosphere, and it's got so many. The positive potential is vast. I was thinking the other day, it's like at one point when they discovered penicillin, which comes from a fungus, that transformed the world. Made the world a better, healthier place. I think the same can be said of psilocybin, which comes from a fungus. It acts on a sort of a higher, more spiritual level, but it's got the same
amazing potential, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just needs to be handled with care. Fire was when mankind first learned to harness fire. You know, fire can be destructive if it's not treated and handled cautiously. So it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you rather eloquently stated something in your book concerning what we're in conversation about here today. And I was wondering if you would mind if I read what you wrote.
Of course not.
Because I thought it was pretty much spot on in light of my own experiences with it as well. You wrote, "Our everyday awareness is seen to be constrained and bounded, as if we were, for the most of the time, subroutine prisoners in some vast matrix-like computation that surges ever onward. Psilocybin temporarily dissolves these constraints, conferring on the experiencer an increased cognitive freedom, facilitating new directions of thought that are not normally available. This is the latent promise of the mushroom, to reveal psychological realms that can enrich our collective existence as living, breathing hominid creatures knitted together within the Earth's evolving biosphere." Simon, have you been able to become intimate enough with this presence or knowledge that arrives through this particular compound to the degree where you can put this into words as exactly what that is? What we're in contact with here?
Still trying. I'm still.
Mm-hmm.
It's always mysterious, the mushroom. I came back. Well, other thing I was going to say is that the term "the other" that was with a capital O. That was a term
Mm-hmm.
used by Terence McKenna.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other is part of the unconscious. Is part of the deepest part of the psyche that comes to life. It's a kind of self-organizing potential
Mm-hmm.
of the human psyche, and there's an I-thou relationship there where it feels like things are being revealed to you, but it's really a part of us rather than
Mm-hmm.
a separate thing. I think that we are the mystery. The mystery is within us. But as trying to work out what's actually going on, you reminded me then what you were saying. I came back a week ago, actually. A friend and I went out trekking in a very wild part of North Wales, up in Snowdonia, where the mushroom is growing at this time of year. And this feeling of the sacred, this was about a week ago, I had that same experience, and it was to do, this was nighttime, and it was the weather was fierce. There was rain and wind, and we were in a very wild place. There was a stream and trees and rocks and mountains, and we had a fire going, but and under the influence of the mushroom, at one point, I walked up. I followed the course of this small river. It was like a stream, but there was lots of water flowing through it because there had been heavy rain. And I walked. I had like a trekking headlight, and I followed this stream up and was clambering over rocks, and I came to a small waterfall about 2 meters high, and there was a patch of ground in the middle of this small river. I knelt on it, and I'm looking at this waterfall, this small waterfall, and it was like I had a peak experience, and it was like it was a sacred thing, and it was like, I don't know whether that's kind of, I felt like like a native or something. It was a very, very profound spiritual experience, and connected with the wild landscape and all the vegetation and the trees and the waterfall. And I had an experience of the sacred, and I walked back and I said to my companion, I said that the sacred is a state of consciousness. I was convinced of it, that what we call the sacred, it's not exactly a thing, it's a state of consciousness connected with your relationship with everything else, I think. particularly your relationship with the whole.
Uh-huh.
If that makes sense. It's like we are the whole perceiving itself. We are nature perceiving itself. We are the universe perceiving itself. We are this whole interconnected, exquisite system that we call nature. We, consciousness is the way that this system wakes up to itself. And I think that's what psilocybin does, is it boosts that process. And so we are that thing beholding itself. So it's a living mystery. And it's got a sacred quality to it. When you reach this state of mind, there's some kind of sacred connection.
Absolutely.
And that's just, I've got no other words to use but that. If someone says, well, what do you mean it was sacred? Was it I don't really mean religious. It's nothing to do with dogma and thou shalt this and thou shalt that. It's an actual state of consciousness. And it's an extremely valuable state of consciousness, and I the urge to want to share it. I think that it seems to be of great newsworthy and of great importance.
Absolutely. As McKenna stated, he says, it's where the rubber meets the road. Simon, in regards to one of our other plant teachers, ayahuasca, it's been stated that the plant itself has its own agenda in helping to heal this split that has emerged between human beings and nature. And this idea was brought forth by a shaman named Don Jose Campos in a manuscript he wrote titled The Ayahuasca Manifesto. If that's the case, I suppose we could see it as sort of a self-preservation reflex that's coming forth through this activity. This particular plant, along with the mushroom that we're speaking about here, does seem to do a rather thorough job in helping to instill in one a deeper respect or reverence of the earth. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the principal functions of these substances. It's interesting that ayahuasca is coming out of the Amazon at the very time. It's becoming more popular now than it's ever been, and it's spreading across the West. Its influence is spreading westwards. At the very time when the Amazon is so beleaguered, and it's the same with the mushroom. So I think that the concept of biospherical homeostasis, which is what we're really talking about, the ability for an organism or the biosphere to achieve health and balance. These substances are tremendous catalysts for that. That's I often speak about their eco-psychological impact is one of the most important aspects of their effects. And I don't think it's just an accident that these substances are there and that they have the profound eco-psychological effects that they do. I think it's they have to be there through a kind of synchronicity, I think, and like a biospherical synchronicity. And they can, if you pinpoint our relationship with the biosphere as being far from healthy at the current time, I always say, I said in my metanoia film that cities are like cocoons that kind of separate us from the living. We forget, if you talk to people about ecosystem services and you mentioned the fact that the biosphere supports human life and the stage we strut around on, human history is played out on, that stage is supported by the larger biosphere. People don't know. They think, some big corporation or company must be running the oxygen levels in the atmosphere or whatever. It's not. The biosphere supports us. It's a single interconnected system that's evolved over billions of years, and we're disconnected from it, and that's a very unhealthy situation to be in. So there are different means of attending to this nature deficit disorder, as it's called by some scientists, there are different ways of attending to nature deficit disorder, but undoubtedly, I know experience that psilocybin and ayahuasca, I've done ayahuasca once in Wales again, actually, and I found it remarkably similar to psilocybin. But your nature deficit disorder can certainly be cured through these substances. That's for sure, and I think that's a valuable aspect of them.
You brought up the problem that arises in all of this and being able to integrate the new paradigms which arrive through the experience with their current modes of thought and perception. How do you begin to bring these experiences to fruit, you think, in a way that truly evolves us in some way?
Well, I think it's actually the hardest thing is to integrate these. The experiences are so profound, and there's such a small minority of people who have had them and kind of talk about them. It's quite a minor thing in culture at large. Integrating those experiences is very difficult, and the longer you leave it, and if you keep having that journey and you don't integrate it in any way, and sort of build it in and connect it in to culture at large, I think you become more and more alienated. So that as Terence McKenna said, the task is to he said you turn those experiences into art of some kind. He said you find the art pedal and you push the art pedal to the metal. So if you can, you write books and music and poetry and make films, and that's what you try and do. That's what I try and do. But it is very difficult. But I think it can be done. And art. I mean, that's the function of art, I suppose.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I don't know what other modes of expression or integration we have to contain what is revealed.
Because I'm not an academic. I'm on the academic side of it. You've got like the Hefter Research Institute and MAPS and the groups in the UK that are doing research and getting papers published and all this kind of thing. But for people, that's one thing. But for people outside of academia, if you've like myself, you have to try and you write books and make YouTube videos and all that kind of thing. But it is a very important thing, this integration. I'm at a period of my life where I don't, I take the mushroom much less than I used to. Maybe 3 times a year, and I am still trying to integrate. So I've got this other book coming out next year. I'm going to start on a new book soon, and I guess the rest of my life will be devoted to trying to integrate that knowledge and those experiences into the larger culture,
Well, I'll certainly be interested in reading your discoveries when they become available. How do you think, Simon, that and if DNA plays some role in regards to the information one comes into contact with via these, I'll call them now, entheogens or plants?
Well, I think you're probably alluding to some of the theories promoted by people like Jeremy Narby. I can't say that's I wrote a book called, after the psilocybin solution, I wrote a book called Darwin's Unfinished Business, which is the main thing, and I state this in the new book that's coming out next year, and what my Darwin's Unfinished Business book was about is the natural intelligence paradigm. That's the thing that's the learning I think I got out of all my mushroom experiences. It's this notion that there's a wisdom and intelligence to nature, and that evolution is actually a naturally intelligent process. And there's intelligence all the way in terms of the laws of nature and the constants of nature and the Lego-like building blocks of nature. I think but this intelligence comes in different forms. It can be unconscious and conscious, and I think it goes through periods of being in an unconscious state and then becoming conscious, like a sleep and awakening. But that So I don't, this notion that there's some kind of information in the DNA, I don't currently buy into that way of looking at things. I mean, DNA is an amazing thing. I think that the danger is you take away from what's already established, and what's already established is the genetic code. And people just don't, people are so dull to scientific facts like the genetic code that they don't raise an eyebrow. But think about the genetic code. Where else? Think of other codes. You've got like the Morse code, you've got computer code and things like that. They're all connected with intelligence, and yet we just seem to take the notion that there's a genetic code in our stride as if it's not kind of amazing. And it's remarkable that nature's got the power to craft that the genetic code will fall into place because of the way nature's configured. So for me, the intelligence and the information and all this kind of thing, the wisdom and intelligence is in nature as a whole. I don't think you need to. I mean, there might be some deeper layer of information within DNA, but I'm not persuaded by those kind of arguments. So I think that the wisdom and intelligence, it's in nature itself. It's in the whole system.
Well, this is what the ayahuasqueros in South America and other shamans in other parts of the world would tell us, is that the wisdom and knowledge that they acquire is provided to them directly from the plant or the spirit of the plant itself. I'd like to know how this all relates to something you spoke of in your book. I didn't get to go through it in detail yet, but you spoke of something called the universal computation scenario. Could you just at least give us a brief overview of that?
That was I devoted a few chapters to that notion in the book. I'm not sure that was what I felt at the time. It was just an interesting take on reality. It really came from, well, it's still partly in vogue because you get people even scientists speculating that the universe is a simulation running on an advanced computer somewhere. Or whatever.
Yeah, I've read some article recently about someone contemplating this.
I think it's because you can. The laws of nature and the forces of nature are kind of software-like in that once they're in place, certain definite processes will be supported and nourished. So the reason I used in the psilocybin solution, I used this notion of a universal, because it sounds a bit cold, but the reason I used that term, a universal computation, was to just talk about the software-like laws of nature. And how one can divine purpose, a sort of teleological purpose and intelligence within those laws, because the fact is nature is configured in such a way that it does extremely interesting and creative things. It's a creative engine, and you get self-organization on all levels, on level of chemistry and physics and cosmological levels, and you get like the genetic code falling. That's handy, falls into place, and you've got these Lego-like building blocks everywhere. And nature is configured such that life can go from a bacteria to eventually to a giraffe or a conscious human. The human nervous system is an exquisite piece of organic hardware. So the fact that nature's got this creative prowess, this astonishing creative prowess, I was using the analogy that it's like a simulation or a computer software, a cleverly configured piece of a clever computation that's got some omega point type goal or function. So that I don't use that. I don't use this computation thing anymore. That was something I wrote at the time because I thought it was useful and it was interesting. But yeah, it was really a kind of a metaphor for the purposeful flow of reality, if you like. It was just a way of making it. I'm a teleologist, and teleology is considered to be, a sin by a scientist. It's like an anathema. You should be thrown in jail if you embrace purpose. You think that nature's purposeful, but I was making the case that nature was purposeful, and I was using computer terminology, or the notion of information processing, I think was the main thing I was trying to get at. So it was just a metaphor, really, to defend this teleological notion that there is purpose, that the reality process has a function to it. It's not just an accident, and we're not wandering around as conscious agents, sort of stumbling and fumbling around inside a huge accident. I think that's absurd, and I think the notion that you have to have the notion that there's an infinite amount of universes, and that's the only way you can explain the significant configuration of our universe. That's like a cop-out. You're just spreading, pushing the buck elsewhere. I think the universe, there is, to quote Paul Davies, this popular science writer, there's something fishy about the universe. There's something going on. And that this something that's going on, I think, becomes more apparent when you take psilocybin or ayahuasca. But that computer simulation, all that kind of computer analogy thing, that was something I wrote for that book, and I don't necessarily talk in that way anymore. I think it was useful at the time to write certain chapters in the book.
Well, certain analogies can be very helpful in understanding things
like I said, the simulation thing, you still hear people writing articles and coming from scientists saying that the universe is a simulation.
Yeah. Simon, what do you think about the subject of the laws of physics possibly being mutable and not really fixed at all? What's your view on that, and is there some relation or insights that you've gleaned from your psilocybin experiences in relation to any views you may have about that?
Well, I heard that view from Rupert Sheldrake on his band. It was a band TEDx talk, I think. I've heard it. I've got a philosopher friend who's mentioned it as well. The notion that that the laws of nature aren't fixed. I don't know. I honestly don't know what to. I feel a bit uncomfortable if the notion that they could change. But on the other hand, it might be a very interesting notion that they could change. But then, it seems to raise more questions than it answers, because then you think, well, what governs? If the laws were changing, if the laws of nature were changing over time or could change, then that begs the question as to what would cause that. Would that just be random, or
Right.
One thing about the universe is it's very ordered and it does very interesting things. And the laws of nature and the forces of nature, the fundamental forces and constants and all that kind of thing, they have a specific value, and they need to have that value in order that nature do the very interesting creative things that it does. So you could make the argument, well, the laws and forces can't just change willy-nilly.
Yeah.
It would be they could change in an extremely interesting way. I mean, I don't know, and I'm not the person to ask about that, really.
Well, I've certainly had moments when I've thought that the laws of physics were being altered in some way. If it is possible, perhaps it's one of Gaia's more extreme ways of self-preservation. It seems the more we learn about quantum physics and the universe, the powers that be appear to have no end.
I've written a lot about natural intelligence in the Darwin's Unfinished Business book, and there's a whole chapter in the new book that's coming out next year, and I'm giving my first ever presentation about natural intelligence in Wisconsin, actually, next May. I'm a great believer in this natural intelligence. Reason leads me to believe that there's... And and once you embrace this notion of natural intelligence, then the whole system is going to be smarter than we can realize. And there was a guy, the biochemist Leslie Orgel, always said that evolution is cleverer than you are. So that might, if there was the notion that the laws could change or something fundamental could change because the system requires it, that's tenable, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's far out, but I don't know. But it might be that evolution works that way as well. I don't know. We don't understand. Life is so remarkable. The evolving tree of life is so remarkable that we don't understand it all yet. And I think there are new mechanisms to discover. So, the possibility that the laws could change and some kind of that would be homeostasis again on an even higher level. You got the value of James Lovelock's Gaia theory, his books that's now become Earth System Science, was he showed that the biosphere exhibited homeostasis. It all acts as it stabilizes itself and sustains itself through various chemical cycles, and life creates a healthy habitat for itself. That Gaia principle, if you like, could extend to the whole universe. Might have Gaia-like principles, and that might be connected to the laws. I don't know. So it's possible what you say. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't like to fall too much into speculation, or as yourself, I like to rely on my own direct experience and go from there. I think
but
that
reality is a strange thing. It's more strange than fiction. So who knows what hidden potentials are yet to manifest.
Mm-hmm. Well, Simon, from where you're sitting, do you see any sort of grand vision that could possibly guide us into some other direction than the one we're currently headed in?
Well, I don't know. Goddamn, I don't know, boy. I don't either. I like the idea of an omega point. I think the problem with Terence McKenna and his 2012 thing is if he's guilty of anything, he's guilty of being too quixotic. But that's the mushroom made him quixotic, Mm-hmm. So I think the original vision of the omega point, this destination of conscious life, I guess, or conscious intelligence, is far, far in the future. I'm sort of veering towards that notion at the moment. And therefore, we are at for any reason really, we are at a critical juncture of human history in terms of our relationship with our relationship with the bigger picture, if you like, particularly our relationship with the biosphere. And we live in testing times because we can't carry on, as lots of people are saying, with business as usual indefinitely. We have to this buzzword of sustainable. But the only way we can have a sustainable culture and a sustainable tenure on the planet is to change our value system and change our relationship. Well, I guess with one another and with the biosphere. And so we're not a mature species yet. We're like a teenager or not even a teenager probably, like a child running. I gave the analogy in this new book that's coming out next year. It's like we're running around this garden that's got everything we kind of need in it, and we're destroying it and uprooting everything and thinking that we can do whatever we like to the garden. Not realizing that it's all connected and that the garden is actually sustaining us. So we're going through a difficult. That's why we're here. That's why you and I are having this conversation, because we sense that we are going through this difficult phase. And lots of people sense it. You've got all the Zeitgeist people and the Venus Project people and the permaculture people and the all sorts of movements now. And people, I think, sense that we can't carry on with business as usual indefinitely. So there has to be some kind of change. And I think It will have to. I said on this interview the other day, all the information necessary to heal our culture and to heal our relationship with the biosphere, all the information necessary for that is within the system. Just like if you damage your leg or your arm or you cut yourself, you've got information in your body, within your organism, within the natural intelligence of your organism to heal that wound. It just takes time for all the bits and pieces to come together in the right position, and then your bone will heal, your scar will form, and your body will heal itself. It's got all the information in there required for the healing process, and I think it's the same with the biosphere. All the information is in there, and it resides in people and books and ideas and movements and all this kind of thing.
It's within
again, I'm optimistic we'll get through this difficult period. If we don't, we'll go down the pan, and some other species will come along that have got the same kind of potential for conscious intelligence that we have, but hopefully we won't go down the pan.
Yes, this important information you speak of is also available within the earth itself, and as we've been speaking about certain plants that sprung from the earth. So
they're like if you look at life, one of the most important properties of living organisms are enzymes, these proteins that allow molecules to connect up in a specific way, and enzymes are crucial for the working of any organism. You can see psilocybin mushrooms and ayahuasca, these kind of plants and mushrooms, as very elaborate, sort of higher-end enzymes. But rather than bringing molecules together, they bring ideas and useful information together. I think that's what they do. All these visions that one has and the experiences one has, that's like the mushroom is acting as an enzyme to bring all this information and sometimes healing into place. But I'm not that I'm one to gossip,
No, we're just...
People can take what I said, take it or leave it. I'm just speculating,
Well, I think you're, like myself, you've seen this things as a true possibility through direct experience. And
I have seen the light.
Well, yeah.
And the light is good. And will guide us.
Well, I think there'll be more and more people to have a little bit more light shining on them in the near future. And we can all get on with the process of raising consciousness, I think, to the next level that we need to do that.
Well, it is a change. It's this very interesting thing, consciousness, because it is mutable. It's a very difficult thing to talk about. Some people are, in maybe the older generation more so, are incapable of talking about consciousness. But if we're to change consciousness, consciousness needs to be talked about. And that's what psilocybin does. That's precisely what it does. It alters consciousness.
Yeah.
So there are healthier states of consciousness, and there are less healthy states of consciousness. If you're enveloped by negative emotions, and you're subject to really powerful negative emotions like hate and all this kind of thing, that's not a good, healthy state of consciousness. Whereas if your eyes open and you're in the moment and you're aware of you are as aware of your internal world as you are of the external world, then that's going to be you're going to be more conscious, and that's a good thing. So or anyone helping to raise consciousness in any kind of way, they're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Simon, thanks so much for speaking with us here today.
No problemo.
I really appreciate it.
I hope it recorded okay.
Yeah, well, I've had some issues here, but I think we've got something that came through rather clear. Could you give us your web address.
SimonGPowell.com.
Okay. And your books, The Psilocybin Solution, The Role of Sacred Mushrooms in the Quest for Meaning, and also Darwin's Unfinished Business, and your film. What was that called again?
I got 2 films up on YouTube. One of them is more popular than the others. One about mushrooms, about the inspiring nature of psilocybin mushrooms. That's called Manna, but you can search on YouTube for Simon G. Powell and you'll find it. And then there's another film called Metanoia, a new vision of nature. That's up there as well. And I've got lots of music videos and that kind of thing. Got about 50-odd videos up on YouTube.
Yeah, so I saw the books, and I think I saw Metanoia, the film, on Amazon. Is that correct?
You can watch it on YouTube. It's also available as a DVD on the USA Amazon site. Okay.
Well, Simon, I've immensely enjoyed our conversation here today, and perhaps we can do this again at some point. So all the best to you. We'll surely speak again.
Yeah. Cheers. Thanks.
Cheers.
If you'd like to join us for upcoming episodes of the Archaic Drum Podcast, or receive updates on our website content in general, you can go to www.archaicdrum.com and sign our mailing list. We're also to be found on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. Thanks so much again for joining us for the Archaic Drum Podcast. Beat by beat, evolving self and society through ancient wisdom and emerging paradigms.